Please note this podcast discusses real-life crimes and may include sensitive topics such as violence, abuse, and other disturbing content. We recommend listener discretion.
He's walking really close behind me, as in I can physically feel him. I'm trying to do everything that you're told to do. Stay calm, don't freak out, don't let them know they've intimidated you. I stepped to one side on the pavement and I went to turn to him to say, "Go on, mate, go past." And as I paused, he jumped fully onto my back. I saw his left arm is around me and his right arm is free and his right hand comes up, and in his hand was a 12-inch serrated kitchen carving knife.
I'm journalist Helen Fospero.
I'm crime reporter Martin Brunt.
And this is True Criminals.
A journey into the darkest corners of the criminal underworld with insights from decades of true crime reporting.
The stories behind the stories, plus exclusive interviews with those closely involved in notorious cases.
Re-examining crimes so shocking, they still haunt our imaginations.
True Criminals Insiders.
If you're following us on Patreon, thank you. And there'll be an exclusive extra chat following the main episode. We've covered some notorious and horrific crimes on True Criminals, interviewing detectives and experts for their insight. But this story is from a very different perspective. We'll be exploring a terrifying crime through the eyes of the victim. This is the story of Natalie Queiroz, who at 8 months pregnant was the target of a frenzied 9-minute attack with a carving knife in broad daylight. Natalie and her unborn baby defied all odds to survive, the blade missing the baby by 2 millimetres. Hanging on to life by a thread, Natalie then faced the unimaginable shock and sense of betrayal, discovering the identity of her attacker.
The basic facts of this case are harrowing. It was the afternoon of Friday, March the 4th, 2016. Natalie was 40 years old and 36 weeks pregnant. She was walking through Sutton Coldfield, just outside Birmingham. The streets were busy with shoppers. Without a warning, Natalie was jumped from behind by a man wielding a 12-inch kitchen knife. The hooded attacker stabbed Natalie repeatedly, 24 times in her chest, stomach and other vital organs, enough, you would think, to kill her. She suffered catastrophic injuries. One lung collapsed. There were slashes to her abdomen and uterus, and her main artery in her wrist was severed. There's a chilling twist. The perpetrator turned out to be Natalie's partner and father of her unborn child, who only that morning had kissed her and her daughters lovingly goodbye. His name is Bobby Raja. At the time, he was a 41-year-old company director with no previous history of violence. At first, Natalie had no idea it was her partner attacking her. He disguised himself, even padding out his shape to alter his appearance.
This attack shocked everyone who heard about it when it made headlines in 2016. But Natalie's story is compelling not just because of the brutality of the crime, but because of her remarkable strength afterwards. She's written a book about her experience, Still Standing, and has become a prominent campaigner for victims' rights, receiving an MBE for her services to young people and knife crime prevention. In this episode, we'll talk to Natalie about what she remembers of the vicious attack. In the next episode, we'll explore how she gradually recovered and coped in the aftermath, and how being an attempted murder victim changed and still affects her life. And in the third episode, we'll explore how, almost a decade on, the nightmare for Natalie is far from over. Changes to prison term rules, brought in under the radar in 2024 and 25, have turned Natalie's world and sense of safety upside down. Natalie, welcome to True Criminals. Martin and I know that revisiting what happened to you isn't easy, but yours is such an important story for many reasons that will emerge throughout our chat, and we really are thrilled that you've come up to be with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me, both of you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to meet you, Natalie. It's been astonishing and, to be honest, rather grim researching your story. At the beginning of each episode, we always issue a trigger warning. But listeners should be aware that what we're about to discuss is really disturbing. Because of the detail you can relate as a victim and because of the viciousness of the attack on you. Let's start with the day of the attack. You've spoken before about how ordinary that day seemed until, I suppose, the moment that it wasn't ordinary. What do you remember about it?
I woke up, I was 8 months pregnant at the time. I had 2 children from a previous relationship and they were only 6 and 10 years of age. So I woke up about 6:30 in the morning next to Bobby and he was his normal self. He rolled towards me. I remember him pulling me in and actually kissing me and with that little twinkle in his eye, me actually pushing him away like, not a chance, mate. And I remember him actually saying, well, tonight we'll get an early night. And I was like, yeah, come on, get to work. And him getting up and getting ready and him dashing out the door, leaving and kissing myself and my 2 girls goodbye. So I'm there for running around and getting my 2 girls ready for school, dashing to school run. So everything is as mundane and relatively dull sounding as you can imagine.
And it all changed that afternoon. What were you doing just before this happened?
That day, I had a day off work. I was actually started maternity leave. And so I was at home that afternoon, getting ready to go into Sutton Coldfield Town Centre to meet Bobby. And he'd called me that day to say, could I go to the bank with him? And he'd insisted that he was going to pick me up. And I remember saying to him, I'm not one to be mollycoddled particularly. And I was going, I can walk down. I'm perfectly fine. Don't leave work early to come and fetch me. That's just crazy. I can walk there. And I remember him being very protective, or seemingly so, by saying, Natalie, come on, you're heavily pregnant. I'd been to the gym that morning. He's like, you've been rushing around. Let's, just chill out. Wait for me. I'll come and pick you up and I'll be there at 2:30. So I was just in the kitchen, about to make a cake for my daughter, being her assembly, to be well done on what she'd done that day. And I was looking at the clock the whole time. And when I was looking at the clock, I was thinking, he must be running late. Like, it's like 20 to 3. And at 10 to 3, I thought, do you know what? I'm going to start walking down. He's obviously got held up. Forget this. I'm heading off. And thank God, in retrospect, that I did that. Thank God that I was, as the police always say, that you were stubborn enough, that you wanted to walk, so you decided you were going to go and you didn't wait. So at 10 to 3, I lock up the door. And as I head down the driveway, I actually call Bobby. And he answers the phone. And this is a conversation that I've replayed a million times in my head, because you think back and you think, did anything in his voice betray anything? Did he sound tense? Did he seem angry? And he wasn't. He was totally himself. He was really apologetic, going, my God, I'm so sorry. I'm running late. I've got caught in traffic. I got stuck at work for later than I thought. I'm on the other side of Birmingham. So he's setting this scene that he was in his car. He was on the other side of Birmingham to where we were at, that he'd run late, he'd meant to call me. He said, I'm really sorry I didn't call you. And I just said, it's fine, I'm walking down. Just let me know when you're in town centre. Give us a bell. And I remember him saying, well, I've got a dash because I'm not on hands-free. And his final words were, I love you. And that's always stuck with me, is that's how he signed off that call. That's going to be the final time of us speaking in what you can call the normal side of life before everything blows up. And so I carry on walking to the town centre. You have those sliding doors moments. I remember it starting to rain and thinking, shall I go back? Shall I fetch the car? Shall I drive in? I thought, no, don't be daft. We'll have 2 cars in the town centre. We don't need that. And I carried on. And about, I suppose, 20 minutes after having hung up the phone to Bobby, I approached Sutton Coldfield Town Centre. And that's in that moment of innocently walking onto what we call a place called Trinity Hill, which cuts behind the church graveyard. That was the beginning of the end, as it were, the beginning of the end, as I always think of my former life.
Will you share that beginning of the end, Natty? I know it's not easy, but I think it's important that listeners understand what you remember and what actually happened to you there as you were walking down the street.
Yeah, so just to set the scene for all the listeners, Trinity Hill starts off as quite a wide alleyway, which cuts behind a church graveyard. But it's quite wide, it's tree-lined, it's not a particularly spooky place, although it has had a very dark history itself, weirdly, and it's somewhere normally I would avoid, but it's the shortest way through to the town centre. And it was raining at this point, so I thought, Just don't be daft, Natalie, just head down there.
It was daylight as well, wasn't it?
It was 3 o'clock Friday afternoon. So I remember actually before I stepped onto Trinity Hill thinking, don't really like cutting down here. A girl had actually been murdered there 20 years before and her memorial stood at the top. And it's always just had a vibe that I just didn't want to go there. But I thought, don't be ridiculous, go down. So I probably entered Trinity Hill already slightly on alert because it was a place I felt uncomfortable. So I'm walking down behind this church graveyard. So it's quite isolated. There's a tree canopy over the top. And I hear these footsteps of somebody running behind me, but they're running in a way that their feet are scuffing along. And I don't know, I think you have this sixth sense. It doesn't feel right with what you're hearing. And I remember looking over my shoulder and all I saw was this guy, very big build, hooded top, hood right over his head down, scruffy jeans. There's something about his demeanour that just felt off. I think for most women, you're 8 months pregnant and you're in an alleyway and there's a guy running behind you, you're going to feel a little bit scared anyway. So I sped up because ahead of me was the town centre. It was literally at the bottom of Trinity Hill. There are bus stops, there's a McDonald's, there's a lot of people, this is like, say, 3:10 in the afternoon.
So safety ahead of you.
Yeah, absolute safety. And Sutton Coldfield is part of Birmingham, but I promise there are nice parts of Birmingham, but it's classed as a safe area, suburbia. And I get myself out the alleyway part and the rest of Trinity Hill is a dead-end road that comes up from the ring road at the bottom. And I'm onto the road, onto the pavement, and I'm by a building and I'm by a parked car. So at this point, I'm trying to talk myself into the fact I'm now safe. And I soon realised that the guy who was running behind me has slowed down and he's now walking. And he's walking really close behind me. I can physically feel him. And I'm trying to do everything that you're told to do. Stay calm, don't freak out, don't let them know they've intimidated you. I stepped to one side on the pavement and I went to turn to him to say, go on, mate, go past. And as I paused, he jumped fully onto my back. His arm came round, he grabbed me and he pulled me backwards into him. So I was now pinned to his chest and his one arm was across my shoulder and he was actually holding my chest with his hand. And I thought I was being mugged. A natural assumption. I've got my handbag on my shoulder. This guy's grabbed me, pulled me backwards. So I'm actually trying to drop my handbag. I remember saying, get off me. I'm shouting and screaming at the top of my voice. And without asking anything, without demanding anything, I saw his left arm is around me and his right arm is free and his right hand comes up. He's got a really scruffy, it was a dark grey gardening glove, as I found out later, but also it was this dark grey scruffy glove. And in his hand was a 12-inch serrated kitchen carving knife. And you have this weird moment of looking up and I remember glancing out the corner of my eye, seeing the blade and shouting to him, mate, you don't need to do this. You don't, because you're thinking whatever it is, you just don't need to do this. But again, didn't say anything. Within a split second, he brought that blade into the centre of my chest and the stabbing began. So I remember feeling this searing pain of this knife going through my chest. You numb out. It's a really weird sensation. A lot of people, especially when the young people that I've worked with in knife crime since, they always go, what's it like, miss, to be stabbed? And I'm going, well, it's painful, clearly. It is. I mean, you've got a 12-inch carving knife in your chest. What do you expect? But our brain's designed as part of our survival that you block that pain out very, very quickly. So you're almost, it's like being in slow-mo and being detached from your body. So everything's been going into slow motion for a second. And I remember watching him repeatedly stab me. And it was like my brain had to process that knife is going in me. I remember looking at my chest. I remember seeing my top ripped. I remember seeing blood coming out from my chest and thinking, he's stabbing me. And as ridiculous as this sounds, and as Martin so kindly highlighted, I was 40 years of age. Thanks for that, Martin.
Sorry about Martin.
Yeah.
There's no way back for me.
And that was 10 years ago, Natalie.
Exactly. You journalist. But yeah, so my 40 years of being on the planet, nothing anywhere near as serious as this. And to be honest, you have this probably false sense of security that you feel these kind of things don't happen to me. And I think that was almost what I was thinking of, but this does not happen in my world, as it were, which is a ridiculous notion because it can happen in anyone's world. And then when your brain suddenly catches up and goes, right, snap out of this, you've got to get out of here. And I couldn't break free. He's stabbing me rapidly. So I spot somebody down the hill. This poor guy, John, he just got off the bus. He's just walking up to go home. He's got his headphones in. And I see him and I'm thinking, right, you're my only...
You're my hope.
You're my only chance here. And I'm shouting at him and shouting, mate, please help me, please help me. And I managed to catch his eye line and I'm holding his eye and I'm begging him. Now, luckily, he came running. There was another guy, Tony, who was going into the town centre, bless him. He was in his early 60s at the time. Apologies, Tony, I've just given your age away. But he's in his early 60s and bless him, minding his own business, just going to the post office before going to the pub for the afternoon. And he said, I saw this guy grab you. I couldn't see you, I could hear you scream, but I could see the knife coming down. And very bravely, he very much in a blind position, in effect, ran down Trinity Hill, comes through the same alleyway that I'd just come through, and he jumped on the attacker's back at the same time that John grabbed the attacker's arm. So these two guys, pincer movement, jumped on him. They pull him backwards. We're on a hill, it's steep, it's wet. And as they pull him backwards, we all lose our footing. And so the guys fall backwards, the attacker falls backwards, and as he falls, he takes my feet out with him. And so I end up landing on top of him. So a horrific position to be in, that you've now landed and I'm lying on my back on
Having
top of
been
him.
at that point subject to a frenzied attack that had gone on at that point for quite some minutes, hadn't it? You've been stabbed all over the place.
At that point, it's been going on for, a few minutes, and then he's now pinned his leg around me and he's still stabbing me. And I only learnt afterwards from Tony, the guy who jumped on his back. Tony said, you were shouting it. And I said, well, shouting what? And he goes, you kept shouting, why me? What have I done to you? And I said, I thought that was in my head. And he said, no, you kept shouting it, why me? What have I done to you? I'm pregnant, stop this.
It's difficult to overestimate the bravery of those two young guys, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Tony's going to love you for calling him a young man.
Relatively speaking, from where I'm sitting.
Don't be daft. But no, absolutely immense bravery. And you know what? We're only, 9.5 years on now. I think people would be even more reluctant nowadays to do that. I think all the press and media we've had about violence within the streets, that potentially people might not intervene. And I'd understand if someone didn't.
I think we can all understand that.
Yeah.
It takes an awful lot to intervene, particularly that one of them had seen the knife and the size of it.
Yeah, exactly. He'd seen it. And when Tony he literally jumped on his back. He's got no idea what this person that he's facing or tackling, or if there's even anyone else around from the angle he was coming at. He wouldn't have even known if there's another person. So they wrestle with him on the floor. They can't pull him off me. They manage to hold his arm down that's got the knife just to stop him from stabbing me. And I think at this point, when I reflect, I realised that this attacker was only stabbing me. So at this point, there's that thing in my brain thinking, why is it me? Because he's not stabbing them. It's me that he's attacking. So they hold his arm down. He gets distracted. He lets go of me because obviously he's trying to get his arm back with the knife. And again, part of our survival instinct, I somehow register that he's let go of me. I get to my feet and I start staggering down the rest of Trinity Hill. At this point, I'm bleeding very heavily. I've probably been stabbed about 17 times, I think, at this point. I'm clutching my baby bump. And all I'm thinking is, can I make it to the town centre? And I knew that I wasn't going to get there. I knew that although I got enough adrenaline to get me on my feet, I wasn't going very far because my legs were already starting to go. And I could see a car park on the left. It's amazing what your brain does. And I was thinking, if I go to the car park, hopefully there's someone there. But I didn't make it. I collapsed face first onto the roadside. So I'm now face down on the road.
And did he still come back for more, Natalie?
Yeah, so when I came round, I crawled further towards the car park and I crawled and curled up in a ball. And at that point, he broke free. He came down the hill. I was watching him walk towards me. He got his head down. I saw the knife. I'm like a child hiding, almost like if I don't look at you, you won't see me. And he bent down in front of me. He punched me in the face repeatedly. He held the knife to my face and he knocked me out. And when I came round, and I put a trigger warning in, but he was holding my arm down and he was slowly cutting me lengthways through the artery in my wrist. And then he stabbed me in the stomach 3 times and had the knife against my throat. And at that point, I'm doing everything I can, realising this man's not going to stop till I'm dead. I think you get to that realisation this man's determined.
And you call him this man. Hadn't you at that stage, though, got a glimpse?
So as he walked towards me, I got a very tiny glimpse of his face. And at first, because I suppose you're in that hazy state, I thought, oh, it's Bob. And I got excited because I thought, well, I told him I was coming into town. He must be coming to save me. But then when I saw the knife And because he was so padded up, he had 4 tops on. He had a rucksack under his front, his rucksack under his clothes, padded him out even further. And that,
a disguise of some
it was a disguise.
sort.
He had spare clothes and spare shoes. So the disguise was also his change of clothes for when he was going to be done. He obviously planned.
He had gloves, didn't he, as
He
well?
had 2 pairs of gloves. He had latex gloves, gardening gloves. He had 2 pairs of trousers. He even had a black bin bag in his back pocket.
Oh, Natalie, when you say he had a black bin bag.
Yeah. So he'd come fully prepared. This isn't somebody who lost their mind in the kitchen for argument's sake, which is horrendous enough.
This is someone who thought he was picking you up, thought he was coming to home, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And this is the man who was going to come home. The police to this day say they think, obviously he did save my life because I was in the outdoors and those people could help. They said that if I'd stayed at home, they think he probably wouldn't have done it at home because otherwise that would link him too directly to it. Their hypothesis is he'd have taken me to, we've got Sutton Park near us, which has got woodland. Take me there. We'd go for a walk there normally to go and get a coffee. And they think the scenario would have been he'd have taken me to woodland, stabbed me, dumped me. I'd have been one of those horrendous stories of body found by dog walker, jogger. So they said, first of all, you did help save yourself. But yeah, I got a glimpse of his face. I then blocked it out. And a lot of people say to me, but when he was in front of you, holding you down, cutting your wrist, stabbing you, did you not see his face? And I remember when I did my therapy, I got quite angry about this part, saying, why am I not looking at him? Irritated myself, why am I not looking at him? And I remember my psychologist saying, Natalie, at that point, your brain probably knew it was him, but your only way to survive, the narrative is this is a man who's attacking me. Because if you tried to take in it was Bob, your world would have broken and you wouldn't have carried on the fight as hard as you did. So I just had to call it that man. So it's funny, yeah, you pick that up because I still refer, when I talk the story, I still go back to that mindset of that man.
And there was a third hero who came to your aid.
Yeah.
Tell us about him.
Yeah, so Callum was only 18 years of age. He was stood at the bus stops minding his own business and he heard Tony, the guy who jumped on Bob's back to start with. Tony had run to the bottom of the hill, was shouting help. And Callum, out of a whole full town centre, was the only person who responded. Now, he ran up the hill, no idea what he was running into. He rounded the corner. He said, I saw you on the floor. You were covered in blood. He was stood over you. He didn't realise that Bobby had a knife. He said he just grabbed him by his hoodie and the back of his belt and he just almost rugby tackled him off and threw him into the car park that I was at the entrance of. Tony carried on shouting at the bottom of the hill and luckily got the attention of 3 officers who completely by chance were in the town centre. Police officers, yeah. They were doing a project to tackle antisocial behaviour after school with school kids and college kids. So they heard the shouts for help. They ran up the hill after Callum had run up and they arrested him. But when they rounded the corner, they said he was back over me for a 3rd time. So despite having been pulled off me twice, Bobby had come back a 3rd time. So had Callum not come, I wouldn't be sat here because the knife was on my throat when Callum ripped him off me. Had the police not been there, who knows when it would have ended. It would have ended up with me not sitting here.
And your injuries were horrific. It's extraordinary that you're sitting here and it's extraordinary as well that your 8-month-old baby survived. I think one of the wounds was only 2 millimetres from her, but you were treated on the scene by an incredible trauma team, which included the air ambulance. What do you remember, Natalie, of that part of people coming to your aid?
Yeah, so the 3 officers came running. 2 of them arrested him and pinned him to the ground next to me. I remember seeing his feet next to me. Apart from that, I didn't look at him. But the female officer who was with them, she was still on probation, bless her. So she was still early on it. What a way to start your policing career.
Wow.
So I remember her literally holding my chest together with her bare hands. At this point, she hadn't got time to put gloves on. She was literally pressing down on my chest. There was another officer there's an off-duty prison officer who happened to be there. It was just one of these really weird coincidences of all these characters who knew what to do. He tourniqueted my arm and then the police took over the tourniquet because obviously the main artery in my wrist has been cut, so they had to tourniquet and stem the bleed. They're getting people to go to McDonald's to go and get wadges of serviettes because they had nothing to pad the stab wound, so they were using serviettes from McDonald's. And so they're putting all those, they're holding it. And the one very grim detail was the officer looking after me, Cassie, she said to me, Natalie, I need you to put your hand on your baby bump. Obviously the undamaged hand, my left hand was really damaged, but my right hand was still usable. But don't look down. And obviously the first thing you're going to do when somebody says don't look down, it's like don't press the red button. Clearly you're going to look down. And I remember putting my hand on the baby bump and on my baby bump and being very spongy. It's all I could feel was this very spongy mass. I didn't know what it was. And she said, Natalie, that's your intestine and I need you to hold it and keep it covered till the ambulance arrives. And it's so weird to sit here and just casually say, yeah, I sat there holding my intestine.
But what you did was clearly important because soon after that, the air ambulance arrives and you actually, ironically, had done a lot of work to raise funds for the ambulance crew that ended up being part of that effort to save your life.
Well, I did all the fundraising afterwards. I'd always given to them ad hoc, but all my fundraising afterwards was focused very much on them. So, yeah, the helicopter was brought down. They were told not to expect that I was going to actually be alive, to be prepared that I was going to be in cardiac arrest. They came prepared to do a caesarean section. There was a land ambulance that had arrived first. So the ambulance has got me in the back. They're cutting off my clothes. They're then trying to get a line into me. Helicopter lands and they're told her blood pressure's so low, be prepared. So what they do is if you're in cardiac arrest and you're heavily pregnant, they will do a caesarean section there and then, whether it's roadside, wherever it is, get the baby out and then try to restart your heart. 1, to take the pressure off your system by taking the baby out of you. 2, to obviously try and save the baby separately. And 3, if they're going to electric shock you, they obviously don't want to do it with the baby inside.
So it's baby first.
Well, they say it's mother first because that's why they remove it. Remove it's an awful way to describe it. Gosh, apologies to my daughter. Deliver her.
Deliver, that's the word.
Deliver's the word.
Deliver,
not remove. So the point is deliver the baby in order to take the pressure off the mother's system because obviously any child is drawing a lot of the system. It's like your radiators being low on water and low on pressure. I was kind of at that stage, so you needed to just take something away that was drawing from that system.
Do you remember any of those conversations, Natalie? I know you're probably in and out of consciousness, but the air ambulance team were absolutely shocked at that stage that you were still hanging on in there, weren't they?
Yeah, because I remember being in the ambulance because I remember them cutting off my clothes. I remember the poor guy trying to get a line into me, the paramedic, and obviously my veins were starting to shut down, peripheral veins or my arms. I couldn't get a line. And bless this guy, kept the protocol, kept saying, sharp scratch, Natalie, sharp scratch. And in the end, I literally looked at him and went, mate, I've just been stabbed lots of times. You don't need to keep saying sharp scratch. And I sort of smiled when I said it. And the police officer said afterwards, because she was in the ambulance with me, she said, you really threw the paramedic. He was like, is she making a joke? Like, oh, she's like nearly dead. And also when they cut my clothes off, because I was horrified that I got terrible socks on, which is always something I remember, a weird thing that you hook onto in a traumatised. Got some sheep socks that my sister gave me, which I just to this day. Yeah.
You don't want any of those for Christmas?
No, I don't do novelty socks.
No,
she knows this.
I don't either. We don't do novelty
socks. No,
she
does. She knows it and she still does it. I think it was Brussels sprouts last year.
Do you remember any of the helicopter?
I remember the crew arriving. I remember saying hello to them and them being quite surprised. And that was a pivotal point insofar as because I spoke to them when they walked in and they didn't expect that. The medic on board, he was a military medic. And he's gone to places like Afghanistan. So he'd seen some horrific traumatic injuries. And he assessed very quickly that my right lung was fully collapsed. I was hemorrhaging internally, externally. My blood pressure was low. He said, normally we'd stabilise before we airlift. We'd try and reinflate the lung. We'd get your blood pressure up or try to with fluids. But he said, because you spoke, we thought we've got a window here of let's get her in the air, let's get to the hospital. Because actually the only thing we can do is try and get to hospital before our heart stops. So I remember them loading me. I remember them backing the ambulance up as close as they could to the helicopter, lifting me out and lifting me in and pushing me into the helicopter. I remember us taking off. I remember thinking, I don't like flying. I remember lying there with the monitors ahead of you. So if anyone imagines what the helicopters are like, your feet in effect towards the tail end and your head is by the door.
You feel pain at that point, Natalie?
No.
I know that sounds a silly question, but does your body protect you from that pain, do you think?
I think you literally have it totally blocked out. Probably was in pain at the time. Maybe it's like childbirth, that you're in horrific pain at the time, but you don't remember it afterwards. The one thing I remember was the fact that because I was on one lung, if anyone's had a lung collapse, they'd understand this, it feels like you're being suffocated. It feels like somebody's put their hand over your mouth and nose and you can't get the air in. It's like you're up against the pressure. And that was the panic, was the not being able to breathe. So I remember having to mentally calm myself down because the more I got worked up, I knew that I wouldn't be able to breathe. So I had to almost zone into a place where I just kept as calm as possible. And that was the scariest thing. So I remember trying to take the oxygen mask off my face because I thought that was smothering me. And obviously they were trying to put it back. And obviously my sats were very low, my oxygen saturation. But apart from that, apparently I was very calm in the helicopter. But I remember just focusing on my daughters. I remember my brain just thought, you can't die. And I got really focused on thinking about my 2 little girls who I'd left at school that morning. I'd been in their assembly. So my final vision was waving them goodbye. And being a single mom to them, although my ex-husband was brilliant, I was the main carer. I remember thinking, I can't die. I can't leave them. They're little. They need me.
And that fighting spirit continued. You were flown to Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. What happened when you got there? Did they put you in a coma or anything like that while they tried to sort you out?
Yeah, I think what none of us ever realise how much goes on behind the scenes with these things. So while they're airlifting me, they're obviously getting updates from the crew. So then the person who's sitting in control of the air ambulance, she was actually phoning ahead to the Queen Elizabeth and giving them as many updates as possible so they could get every speciality they needed. So by the time they landed, and it was only an 8-minute flight, there was upwards of 30 people in this resuscitation room. And that's obviously doctors, nurses, because obviously there's an obstetrician to deliver little one, there's all the cardiac, thoracic, there's the major trauma. And it was a military doctor who received me because the Queen Elizabeth is a military hospital. And so Colonel K, very, very posh man, I remember he received me and I remember him saying, Natalie, we're going to put you to sleep now. And I was just nodding because I was so exhausted through trying to stay calm. And I just thought, I can't hang on any longer. And I just nodded and he said, and we won't wake you up till at least tomorrow.
And it was several days before you came round, I think.
No, it was just one day. One day for me.
Okay.
It was several days for my daughter. For me, they brought me around the next day out of the coma.
And how did that feel when you came round?
If you've ever had surgery, you know, for a start, that your head's very, very bleary when you come out of any anaesthetic. And I think when you come out of an induced coma, times that probably by at least 100. My first thought was the fact that I was alive. As weird as that was, because I remember going to sleep and obviously at that point I had no idea when I'm just nodding at them to put me to sleep if you're going to come out the other side. I remember first thing thinking, my God, I'm alive. I've got a nurse and a doctor trying to talk to me, asking me if I knew where I was and reminding me about what happened and telling me that I was at the Queen Elizabeth. Then they're telling me that my daughter survived, that they've delivered her, but she's in a different hospital, she's in a coma, and she's fighting for her life and I need to be prepared. She might not make the next 48 hours. So it's this whole roller coaster of...
That's a lot to absorb, isn't it? When you've just come round from 24 hours knocked out.
You've come round and they're suddenly saying, right, you're doing okay, but you've been stabbed. You're in the Queen Elizabeth Major Trauma Centre. Your daughter's been delivered, but she's fighting for her life and she's in a different hospital. For anyone on a normal day, that would be quite a lot to take in. And then the next thing is obviously I'm looking around the critical care room and at this point I'm still looking for validation that Bobby wasn't the person because I'm still hoping beyond hope that I'd got it wrong with that little glimpse. And I'm allowing my brain to think a little bit more that it was because I knew that I was in a safer place, I guess. But I'm looking around for him and I'm looking for my family, but there was just West Midlands police everywhere. There was some in suits, CID, there were people in uniform, there was almost like an armed guard, I think, at the bottom of the bed. And all I get told is, Natalie, the police have to talk to you. And then it's that horrendous sinking feeling of realising this is actually a real major criminal investigation. And the number one witness is yourself. And you're lying there in the bed, feeling like death, literally warmed up. I've got tubes hanging out of me. I've got my oxygen mask still on. I can't move. And therefore, my first in-depth conversation, if you can call it in-depth, was with a police officer. And that was being interviewed about what I remembered. And then that's when they confirmed to me. They said to me, do you know who it was? And I said, well, I thought for a moment it might be my partner, Bobby. And they didn't say anything. And then they suddenly went, well, Natalie, we're really sorry to tell you that, yeah, we are holding Babur Raja, your partner, Bobby, in Sutton Police Station. We arrested him on the scene and he's being charged with attempted murder of you and your baby. And that point, there's no getting away from the hard reality. And even now, I think about it, it always chokes me at that point because you just think that was horrendous. There was just no hiding from it at that point. And I think at that point, you realise that life has changed forever. There's no like, oh no, it wasn't him, it was somebody who looked like him, he's going to be here to support you in a minute, he's across in the other hospital looking after your baby. No, the man who's done this is the man who got out of bed that morning before the attack. All fine, all lovely.
Thank you, Natalie, for sharing your extraordinary memories of such a brutal attack. And we're well aware that every time you go over your story, whether you're at speaking events or talking to youngsters or doing podcasts or speaking in Parliament, it's not easy. So we're very grateful that you've shared your story with us. And in our next episode, we're going to pick up the story of your recovery and the full unmasking of your attacker, your then partner, Baba Raja. Listeners, if you've been affected by any of the issues discussed in this episode, please do check out our show notes for links to resources. There's Natalie's book, Still Standing, domestic violence helplines, support groups, and information on White Ribbon UK and other campaigns Natalie's involved in. Welcome to our new Patreon followers. Thank you for joining. Just to remind listeners, if you want to hear the episodes ad-free, you can. Head over to patreon.com/True Criminals. Stay with us for 3 months at Patreon and we'll send you a free True Criminals mug. Martin and I haven't even got one of those yet. Your support means everything to us. If you're enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to leave us a review. It helps us grow, reach new listeners, and keep bringing you the stories you love. This episode is brought to you by Audio Bleach Global. Our producer is Russell Barnes, with audio production by Andrew Chappell. The original score was composed by Chap Mannequin, artwork by Bleached, executive produced by Lee Mann. Follow True Criminals on Instagram at true.criminals and on YouTube at youtube.com/@true-criminals. For exclusive content and ways to support the show, visit us at patreon.com/True Criminals. For partnership opportunities, please contact us at contact@audiobleachglobal.com.